And thank you for joining us at Secular AZ today. We are a nonprofit organization focused on protecting the Constitution and the separation of church and state for over a decade. The election, thank goodness, is 4 days away. And while probably most people have already mailed in or turned in their ballot, we are going to be talking about the many ballot initiatives that you will find on your ballot. Next week, there will be no Friday discussion because not only do we all need a break after Election Day, but it's also Veterans Day. However, on 11/18/2022 at noon, that's a Friday, we will be talking with Thomas, and I hope I'm saying his name right. We'll find out in 2 Fridays, Thomas Lasake, to discuss the Christian rights embrace of firearms and the idea of a holy war. So everybody hopefully can show up for that. I've been watching a great series on Vice News called Breaking the Vote, and they dedicated a whole episode to the idea of civil war. So I'm really looking forward to that. And everybody should mark their calendars for December 11th, 2022 for our Secular Summit. Today, we are going to be speaking with Pinny Sheoran. She is, and some of you may have heard her recently on NPR. I know I did. She is president of the League of Women Voters in Arizona and president-elect of the League of Women Voters of Metro Phoenix. She provides leadership for the League of Women Voters of Arizona, specializing in the areas of advocacy, including representing League of Women Voters Arizona as a designated volunteer lobbyist. Pinny is a retired faculty member of the Maricopa County Community College District, where she taught computer science. She's a fierce advocate for public funding of education, fair redistricting, and voting rights. She's active in helping voters register to vote and is a deputy registrar with the Maricopa County Election Department, as well as a poll worker with the County Elections Department, serving as an inspector at polling locations. Oh, I have questions for you about that too. I'm excited to hear about that. And I know you're going to be talking about ballot initiatives, but I'd really like to hear about your work as a poll worker. She's lived in Arizona for over 45 years and raised her children in the Arizona public school system. So, Penny, is there anything that you would like to add to that very impressive bio?
No, I'm passionate about this, and I am so honored to be speaking to you all. And my husband is even more excited that I'm speaking to a secular Arizona group. He's an avowed atheist. I'm sort of agnostic, so he's so excited I'm doing this more than me.
Oh, good. Well, you should encourage him to become a member and maybe join.
We
one
are
of our
members.
committees.
We are
good,
members.
Good.
Yeah, we have been members. I don't know if Joe Blankenship Joe is on this call, or some of the other folks that really encouraged me and us to join. So I'm happy to be a member of this group.
Oh, fantastic. So yeah, you should have the ability to share your screen if you want to go ahead and take it away. And then if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A here on the Zoom webinar, or to post them in the Facebook post. So go ahead, Penny, take it away.
Okay, great. Thanks a ton. Hey, Jean, can you see my screen? Can you see my share screen?
Yes, it looks good.
Oh, good. When you're not the attendee, it's unclear. Can they see your screen or not? So I'll get started here. I do not need to introduce myself again. Jean did a pretty phenomenal job in introducing me. So I'm going to go through this fast, because what I really want to do is to be able to engage with you all in terms of the ballots and the kinds of questions Gina's asking. And I also want to use this platform to really elevate the importance of vigilance and paying attention. And Jean, if you will let me, if you will indulge me, you know, the League did, filed a lawsuit, and the judge voted in our favor. So I want to talk about that and what it actually means for us going forward. Okay, so if I know you want to talk about ballot initiatives, I wanted to be sure you knew that. I do hope you'll stay on the screen. It makes me feel a lot less weird that I'm not talking into a black hole. I want to bring to attention for everybody, if you already voted, great. If you haven't and people are saying, oh, I don't know, this ballot's too long, I don't understand it, reassure them and send them to the Vote 411 site. Jean, as a candidate, filled out as soon as we asked her to. Many candidates have provided information, and we have an in-depth analysis of the ballot measures there. Before I get started, Jean, on the Secular Arizona group, I want to make sure that it's very clear that I am here representing advocacy issues for the league. And I am actually lobbying because it's a ballot initiative as I talk about what we support and don't support. I have to always give that disclaimer up front. All right, a couple of things that I want to elevate because this is going to be so critical this elections. We've got to make sure everybody knows the two things that govern how things go on at polling locations. So I'll follow up when we jump into that. And that is the VRA, the Voting Rights Act. And the second is the HAVA, which is the Help America Vote Act. And it's critical that everyone is paying attention. And if there are any efforts to violate those two acts, it's critical that we point that out and send that information to Election Protection Arizona. There's an army of lawyers and so on gathering evidence, and we're going to need, this is no longer a light matter. We all need to step up and gather evidence because we're going to have to fight it on the courts, and I hope we don't have to fight it in the streets, okay? All right, so I'm going to go very quickly over what's on your ballot, okay? Of course, candidates, all of the candidates. We have actually 250 races listed or plus, school boards, city councils, so on. Many of you are saying it's too late, I already voted, and I understand that. But I'm telling you this because this is going to come back in 2024, the Vote 411, and it's critical that we get candidates to give their information so we can rebut the big lie and the election deniers. There are judges, but we don't have judges on Vote 411 because judges does not allow us to have independence from the retaining and removal of judges. It has to do with candidate work. And so we're not able at this time to give much information on that. But we, of course, have all the ballot initiatives and referendums. Okay. So please keep Vote 411 in your mind because we'll be back again to fight this. And it's important we elevate the candidates that are on the side of democracy as we go through this. All right, so I'm going to, this is just a context for everybody, okay? And I'm giving you this context because you need to know this is the context that caused us to stand up against many of the items that are under the, in your ballot propositions, okay? Our Constitution, Arizona Constitution, very clearly says that, the legislature has the right to create laws, but it also reserves the power of the people to propose laws and amendments to the Constitution or to enact and reject such laws and amendments on the polls, independent of the legislature. That is the phrase I want in everybody's mind as I walk you through this. We really stood firm in what we were saying based on what the Constitution calls out. In addition to the fact that we protect voters' rights, and the League is a huge, huge supporter of ballot initiatives, it was important to ground our argument based on what's in the Constitution and why these ballot initiatives are problematic, at the very least, okay? Oops, I didn't mean to do that, okay? I'm going to now go to this important phrase, and you're going to say, well, I don't know what that matters, because in this ballot proposition, we have 10 propositions, 8 of them were brought forward by the legislature, okay? And why did they bring it forward? Because they couldn't get their way at the legislative session, so they brought it out here. The other thing that we should be very alert to when legislature brings in propositions, some of these propositions, they actually passed as law, but they wanted those laws to be protected and never repealed by a Congress, by a legislature that might changed. So when you put it on the ballot initiatives and people vote for it, it can be changed. So this was to really not just codify, but to protect these terrible, terrible propositions from being repealed in any way. So I want us to understand, I want everyone to understand that if you've already voted, no, you just, gave that power, based on the, on this notion that if the voters vote in support or opposition, that stands, okay? So in red is where we stand as a league, okay? I'm doing it in categories, okay? The items on the left, which is 3 propositions that are taking away our independence to make laws. And the 4th one, which is just the most specious nonsense about Arizona ID. I want to speak on all of those. We are against every single one of these, okay? Proposition 128, which basically says the court determines, okay, that the court can interfere, okay, in a ballot proposition if it's deemed illegal or unconstitutional. Here's why we object. First, who brought it? The legislature, okay? Second, they have opportunity during the legislative session to vet these ballot initiatives. It has to go past the legislative council. What were they doing? It should have all been vetted at that point. This is to put citizens' ballot initiatives so that the judiciary can interfere in our right to bring forward ballot initiative. For that very reason, we're against this, okay? It is judicial interference. And we know how unbiased, right, in quotes, the judiciary can be. So allowing courts to make a determination on the rights of citizens has become problematic, especially in Arizona. So this needs to be voted down for 3 reasons. Who brought it? The interference of the court, okay? And more importantly, they had their chance to vet all of this before it was put on the ballot, okay? Second item is the single subject. This is the most egregious one because this is their claim that ballot initiatives are complex and, everything, it's called the, rolling log model where we, a rolling log gathers moss. So we gather everything and throw it into a ballot initiative. And you know what they're mad about? They're mad about all the initiatives that address fundamental rights that we have. And they're not simple, they're complex, okay? So their argument is if the legislature can only do a single subject, so should the citizen. And we say no, because the citizens have independence from the legislature. So we argue against this for the independence issue. We also argue against this for the following, okay? Healthcare rights, women's rights, rights to education, accessibility to all our communities are not simple matters. They're complex matters. Voting rights, let's take voting rights. What's under voting rights? Your ability to register because you're eligible to register. Your ability to cast a ballot because you are now eligible to register. You should be able to cast a ballot, okay? Your ballot we cast, the vote we gave is counted, okay? And that when people speak, it's their voices that make the final determination. These are not simple subjects. So how do you make a simple subject? That's our first problem. Second problem is, who decides it's a single subject? So where do you bring in? The judiciary again. And we have known that the judiciary has not voted against our rights on very complex matters. Voting rights is a fundamental issue. Women's rights is a fundamental issue. Healthcare is a fundamental issue. And the notion that somehow a single subject will give us redress on legislation that's being passed that harms us in our communities is unacceptable. So we spoke against this. I've been speaking about these so much, I forgot which one I talked about on the press. So I think it might have been the 129. The third one is really not just disingenuous, but absolute hypocrisy. Think about it, okay? They are using a simple majority to impose a super majority on the citizens. Nonsense, okay? No, we need to stop that. Besides, who's bringing it? I always going to ask you the question, if the legislature brings it, vote it down, because they had the chance to pass legislation, okay? And so, no, look at this, okay? And this is because they want to make it harder for citizens to independently make law that is enshrined in our Constitution. And we need to say no. Anyone who voted for this and said yes, because they didn't understand it, just gave up their right and eroded their right. The last one is so problematic. The popular moniker for this is easier to vote, harder to cheat. This is harder to vote and has nothing to do with cheating, okay? This is about harder to vote. The narrative, if you see in the SOS arguments, the narrative is, oh, Arizona needs voter ID, okay? That's absolute nonsense and specious and disingenuous and everything else that I cannot say on this call, okay? So Arizona has one of the most robust voter identification processes, protocols, and laws in order for someone to cast a ballot. Let me make this argument for you all. And if you've already voted, that's fine, but you've got to be ready to make this argument to your communities and your neighbors. One, you've already proven that you're eligible to vote. There's two parts to this that are problematic in this. The first one has to do with voter identification at the polls. The second has to do with additional information being required at the mailing ballots. So let's think through this for a minute. You already have proved you're eligible to be voting, eligibility to vote by what? By becoming registered and receiving a voter registration ID. You've already done that. Now, when you get to the polls in person, let's talk about in person, okay? You are being asked to identify, are you who you are, and do you live where it says you live on the registration rolls? The first one is absolutely to make sure you are the person voting. But the second one is very critical because it ensures that you get the correct ballot, okay? So you can vote. Now, that's what you're required to do. You come into a polling location, you give those two pieces of information, and you're given a ballot, and you're on your way. Okay, or not given a ballot and vote provisionally. Regardless, the law, how our law says, if someone comes to the polling location, regardless of whether they can vote or not, we're supposed to give them a provisional ballot, okay? And then in the back end, they'll clean it up. That's part one. Part two, okay? You've already proven who you are. You're a mail ballot voter. You have, in order to get a mail ballot, you have to provide additional identification that you are who you are and your address is accurate, just like you do it when you come into person. And then you have a third part you have to do that the person at the polling location doesn't have to, which is you have to sign. The league agrees with the verification process. Arguments being made also, signatures change, whatever. We have one of the most scientific and robust, and this has been proven by research, it's been proven by data, mechanisms to verify the signatures, okay? Now what they're saying is that's not enough. We need you to give us your date of birth and your social security. Now I'll make this argument that the chances of you not remembering how to sign something is remote. Your signature may change, but there's mechanisms to. The chances of you transposing the last 4 digits of your social security number because you're trying to do it in a hurry, or your driver's license, anytime we involve numbers like that, the chances of individuals making a mistake and transposing is a problem. It means more money has to be spent to hire more people to do that vetting. Now you're vetting 3 pieces of information. There's an identification, there's an exposure to identification theft. There's also, with all the bad actors we have, an exposure to the potential that a bad actor in the elections tabulation area is able to connect a ballot to an individual, okay? And the claims, oh, that can't happen. No, with the number of bad actors we have, anything is possible. Okay. So for that very reason, we're really, really adamant that this is the worst thing. Actually, the county recorders have come out against this because of cost. Okay, so that's my very passionate, hey, this is where we stand. On the right-hand side are 3 ballot propositions, and I'm happy, Jean, to send this to you if that's of any value. We're just 3 days before elections, so may or may not matter. Proposition 130, 310, and 308. I will tell you that the league has not taken a position because we have very strict guidance on when we speak for and against something, we should have studied it and not just shoot off the hip. And we have not studied these issues. So we did not have the ability to come out strongly and say, hey, we don't support it, we support this. I will say that most league members are aligned with supporting these 3 propositions. Now,
I'm going to go ahead and put from last week, Vic's picks. So I'll put that in the Facebook chat as well as the webinar chat. Sorry, go ahead, Pinny.
Yeah. This next one, Proposition 131, the Lieutenant Governor. This is one that causes everybody to get mad at us at the league. In 1960, the league did a study and they arrived at the conclusion that we need to depoliticize the Secretary of State and that we don't have a clear succession path and that the Lieutenant Governor ought to be the way in which we go for a variety of reasons that we studied. The world has changed, right? Okay, since 1960. We have not updated that, but we've hung tight on that. So we had to take the position to support it. Where I will tell you our red flags are raised is this, okay? When we supported it, we supported the notion of a lieutenant governor and a succession to the next level of executive, the executive branches of elected officials. What this proposition has now introduced is the notion of an appointed person in that office. Now, in 60s, it probably was an issue and was not an issue. 80s, it would not have been an issue. 90, 2000, 2010. But what happened in 2020? We had duly elected people removed from office and replaced with appointments that were election deniers. So now this has cause for grave concern for us, okay, as to how, but this is where we are, this is where we stand. I'm going to go to, I went through the Proposition 9309, but I want to draw some attention to this because it's so important for us to understand. This is just not all of us. It also has, this is so harmful to our tribal communities. Right now, we have, you show a photo ID or a government issue ID with a photo and an address and it's current, good to go. You don't need anything else. You don't have those two. And you can show us any one of these pieces of information. And then the last is you have a photo ID, no address, or the address is different, but you have accompanying information that gives us the correct address. You might say, well, 1 and 2 will suffice. I would like to point this out. Over 8 of our tribal, actually more, our tribal nations do not have a photo ID or an ID with an address. Their tribal laws don't permit them to do that. For years, we have allowed the tribal nations to provide tribal IDs. This would essentially take it out. That's why we've struck the middle line. And if you look at the bottom, they made a concession to the military and everybody else who's traveling that said, oh, you can use passport and military ID, but they removed the ability to use tribal ID. So the tribal nations, if this passes, many of them will not be able to vote. And another piece of data, and this comes to us from the Arizona Tribal Legal Clinic, okay, and that's where we got our data from. And that's what I also spoke out against on this one. What's important to remember is that only 18%, as I understand, of people who don't live in America, who live in our tribal communities and nations vote by mail because mail is unreliable. so they vote in person. This has a huge impact on their ability to vote. This should not only be voted down, we should do everything we can to make sure this doesn't happen, okay? Then I'm going to go into the last two, which is citizens-led initiative, my very favorite. We don't have a stand on debt collection because we have not studied that particular issue, but in general, all of our members tend to support this, okay? And the second one, you all know, we've been fighting Stop Dark Money. I don't know how long the league's been doing it. And just my own recent memory, I think it's like 6 times we've tried at this. And this needs to be voted. It's weaker than the constitutional amendment we were looking for, but it's still an important step forward. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and open it up to questions. I almost feel like I wish I had a chance to explain this much earlier, but I'm happy for us to be thinking about this. If people haven't voted, please call them and tell them, hey, these ballot propositions, you got to vote on them. Okay?
And I'm sure that we still have people, you know, who are working on get out the vote efforts and want to be able to have conversations with people at the doors, or, you know, so there's still some stragglers out there who haven't voted yet. I wonder if you would be able to talk a little bit about what you all were able to block in Cochise County with your lawsuit. Can you speak about that?
Absolutely, I can speak about it. First, I want to give 2 pieces of information to you all, okay? It's not actually Cochise County, but I want to talk, because you brought up Cochise County, I want to bring this up, and maybe your members aren't aware of this. Just last week, Cochise County Board of Directors, Board of Supervisors chose to vote that they would hand count all their ballots. We spoke against it. They didn't listen to their attorneys. The Secretary of State is going to sue them. There's a whole problem there. We spoke against that. We need to raise that alarm. The second is Pinal County did it this week, and we spoke against it. Thank God they listened to their lawyers, and they're not going to go forward. Why is this important? You know, the way chaos is going to get sown in this election is in so many different ways. I don't want to give depressing news, but we're in depressing times. And one is, if they can delay, so a hand count, not only will it cost more, could potentially be, in order to turn in their canvassing, they actually leave out swaths of voters because they couldn't count them. Or, okay, so we should be prepared to litigate them out of this universe, if you will, okay? And the second problem is, if they delay the certification, it will put our elections in chaos in Arizona, okay? And that is really the intent there. So even though Pinal voted against it, we still have the Cochise problem. And so I want us to all be, because all they need is one place to win to then force that on us as we move forward into the next session. So I want to draw attention to that. The case that we filed actually was filed against a group in Yavapai County and the Clean Elections USA, which has other problems because the Clean Elections Commission is suing them too for using their name, has so our lawsuit was really, and our counsel was Protect Democracy, and they were phenomenal counsel that we had. Locally, we had Osborne and Maladon, and Wilmer and Hale were our local legal counsel. And in our case, what we were able to prove, well, let's talk about, there were 2 cases filed. There was a case by Mark Elias that the judge ruled in a way that was not favorable. And then there was our case where he really had an opportunity to reverse, and he did do that. Our whole case was built on the notion that, one, this intimidation is intimidation. It's on the person who is being intimidated to say, I feel unsafe. Okay, so we're able to prove that. We had very strong testimony on actual experiences. The league had a lot of data to provide that we were able to get from our members, and the judge listened, you know, and that was the important thing. So basically what his ruling says is that this group and any affiliated people to the Clean Elections USA must post on their social media and Truth Social the actual Arizona law that permits ballots being brought by not just the voter, but for the family, which they call the mules, okay? And that's the first thing. The second is that, and it's a temporary restraining order till elections. So the second part is that if they take any pictures and so on, they can dox. This is really the most important thing, that they can dox, because this sets precedence for us. When we as the league chose to pitch our battle with them, we were just trying to stop this localized kind of thing from spreading. That was our intent, okay? But this ruling is so strong that I'm being told, and you've got a lot of good lawyers on your team, so that nationally the legal community believes that this was a very important precedent and a win, because they can use it to cite that whole issue of doxing and intimidating voters, not just at the ballot drop box, but beyond, And so that's a quick summary of the case. It's longer and deeper, and all the work we had to do to get there.
I'm not really seeing any questions anywhere, but I would like to talk more because of your work as a poll watcher, poll worker, and maybe you could talk a little bit about the process to do that. And I know it's too late for people probably to sign up to do that now, but if they're interested in doing poll working or poll watching or whatever, if you could tell us the difference between those things.
Okay, I'm going to start by clearing up some nomenclature, because this is important for people to know how they can plug in. A poll worker is an employee of the county. Okay, you are not a watcher, you're not an observer, you're the people everybody else is watching. Okay, just so we're clear about that. You're the poll worker. Okay, it's my impression they may still need people, so I wouldn't hesitate to call the Maricopa County Elections Department and say, do you still have openings? And the reason I say that is because if you've done poll work before, and we're kind of a little afraid now is the time, to try to help out. Let's talk about poll observers versus poll monitors. Okay, that's the key phrase. The poll observer is that legal group from a party that can be inside the polling location. I serve as an inspector and have been an inspector of polling locations now for election cycles. Okay, 4 elections. Okay, and the observer has to get approval from the political party and bring that the letter, and there's very strict rules as to who they can talk to. In 2018, I want to tell you all, they broke the rules all the time. 2020 was equally bad. They were breaking the rules all the time. 2018, 2020, but in 2022 primary, because we got the support from the elections people as to what our rights were, I was able to, and so were others, to really shut them down. Because what they did is they had friends who were poll workers. When I say they, you know who I'm talking about, who were poll workers, and they would chit chat with them. And that is against the law. They're not allowed to do that. They can only talk to the inspector or a troubleshooter. And they broke the law all the time and would touch the equipment, get into the equipment. I'm really worried about that part, so you'll need to be aware of that. I also know that we have poll observers from one party in every polling location. We do not from the other party. And some of the logic that the other party might have is, that's a very red district, we're not going to send somebody. But that's exactly where they need to send somebody, because the observers have legal authority to report violations, okay? Because they're inside the polling location. The poll monitors or watchers, if you will, cannot come within the 75 foot. And really most of the work is being done by Election Protection Arizona, which is a coalition of groups that are sending out monitors to polling locations. You sit far away from the 75 foot. You don't want to engage with any of the crazies, but you can report. You can report to the Election Protection Hotline, and they have a huge group of lawyers in the background adjudicating and, triaging those calls. So that's the big difference, Jean, okay? And I want to talk about poll workers themselves, okay? We have poll workers who went through training by a group called Easy AZ. Notice how close it is to EPAZ, okay? These poll workers were first trained by them and then got their training through the county. So their mind has already been poisoned before they come in here. And I saw the evidence of that as an inspector in primary, where I had two challenge everything I did and follow me even when I went to the bathroom. So be aware of that, okay? Be aware of that group. Some of these election deniers are serving as poll workers, and one of the things they could be doing is amplifying on social media, which is not allowed to do. They can be fired for that. They're not allowed to do that. Okay, you unmute, Jean.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I can imagine, you know.
Okay, so we're identifying, it's very interesting, at least in my team, I sent out who's on the team, and a couple of folks started researching who these other people are. And one of them has a podcast and a website. So people need to be watching this, you know. So if you watch these groups and someone says, I'm at a polling location and I'm seeing this at the tabulation machine, okay, that's a poll worker giving out information. Because a voter, you don't see that, you know, either your ballot goes in or you don't. Okay, you don't know what's happening in the back end. Okay, so we have to be so vigilant, everybody. You know, you know, I'm fearful. I suppose I could stay home and just put my head under the blanket, but I'm not that kind of person. So I'm out there in the polls because we need to be strong. So that's kind of, I hope that, are there some questions in the chat? I don't know, I can't tell.
No, we don't, I don't see any questions. So I've had a few people and so a few people have said, you know, I'm worried about putting my ballot in the mailbox. And of course, it's too late now to do that, right? Or, you know, I don't know if these drop boxes are safe, you know, where I can drop my ballot off early, you know, could there be some, you know, somebody set fire to it or whatever. And I just, you know, I told people to do whatever they felt most comfortable with, you know. I felt comfortable putting mine into my mailbox and trusting the, you know, and I got my text notification to let me know that it was received, that my signature was verified, that it was counted. And so I just, you know, I tell people, if you know, go to iwillvote.com or beballotready.vote so that you can get those updates. But I just don't want to be, you know, walk around afraid.
We shouldn't, because the way we're going through courage, not being afraid, Jean. The other point I want to make is many of the ballot boxes are in polling and voting centers. We need to tell, if you're afraid to put your ballot in a drop box that's a standalone, that's not your only choice. Go into a polling location and drop it off, because those are secure, okay? And, you know, in early voting, all those ballots are collected every night and sent with police guards now they're using to take them to the tabulation center. So if you're ever concerned about that, come and drop it off at a polling location or a vote center, whatever is open. And Be Ballot Ready tells you where all of those are located. So there's no reason to be afraid of that. Jean, we need to get those votes in. We've got to get people not to be afraid and turn it in, because that is how we can push back on all this bullying and intimidation that so many people voted, okay? The one area that concerns me a little bit, I should just tell you, it was flagged recently, is that by law, 10 days before election, the Secretary of State has to post the number of voter registration on the list, okay? And since April, there's about 134,000 registrations that are less than what was in April. So the question is, where are they? Did they get purged? Where did they go? Why 134,000 less than the number? So a number of registrations that the Secretary of State posted in April was a certain number, okay? And then law, they have to post. Now, it could be simple. administrative cleanup, people moved, died, incarcerated. Those are the most legitimate reasons, if you will. But if anything else, then it needs to be raised. So please, let's get the word out to everybody to say, hey, if you have not voted, check your voter registration before you go to the polls. Okay.
And League of Women Voters, do you put together canvases? Do you work with other advocacy groups to do kickoffs as an independent group outside of campaigns? How does that work?
So Jean, 2020 was the first year in which the League really got involved in this get out the vote work. That's not really historically work that's been done in Arizona. It might be in other states. Michigan, Wisconsin, they're knocking on doors. It's not in the psyche here. But 2020, we did it 2018. 2020 really is when we try to build some capacity, build muscle to do this kind of work. Okay. Now, in this election, it's taking them from not doing anything to kind of stepping in. So they're all more comfortable with texting. We still can get people to do phone banking, and canvassing have struggled to get people to walk door to doors. That's our 2024, we've got to build muscle on that front. Okay.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because of the weather?
Our median age is 60.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah. And
And
so
with
that means
COVID and fear and, walking. And I mean, we've been able to raise money to get younger people to help us, but we don't have enough younger people stepping up to help us. A lot of them who are really, strong canvassers have been sucked up by the campaigns, which is fine. I mean, that's fine. So at this stage, we sent out close to 500,000 plus texts. That many voters we tried to reach, through our texting to get them to vote. Primarily women 18 to 40. I don't know if you saw some of the new data coming, that 18 to 24 is still not voting yet. Okay. Although we keep getting told that, they're all going to show up. Maybe they like having a party and want to show up at the polls, and I hope so and pray. But as of the ballots that have been returned, there's some information that's come out that shows that's not where the returns are coming from in that age category. Okay. So that's a challenge, right? Okay. I mean, we've got to get them to show up.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that you are doing one or all three, phone bank, text bank, or canvassing. And I'd love to hear your anecdotal stories about the conversations that you're having with people, because there's this general anxiety right now. And I mean, one could even argue that there's been a general anxiety since 2016, or at the very least since COVID. And everything just seems to be like we're getting one thing after another. And so it's just everybody, I know I feel it quite frequently, that my nerve endings are just exposed all the time. And, you look on social media, or you watch the, media reports and polling, and you see, that perhaps Katie Hobbs and Carrie Lake are neck and neck, and it's a dead heat. But the thing that saves me is when I go to the doors, and I think of earlier this week at the Obama rally for the Mark Kelly campaign, and hearing Mayor John Giles, who is a Republican mayor in Mesa, who, if he hasn't already been censured by his party, he's going to be.
He's been censured already.
Yeah. See, anytime anybody is, acts like the old GOP, the party of McCain or John Kyle or whatever, they get censured. Stephen Richer has been censured. Rusty Bowers got censured. Every moderate Republican, and I don't even think they were that moderate, lost their primary. So, the GOP, there was a great article today. It is for subscribers only, and it's on in the Arizona Republic. I think it actually came out a couple days ago, but it was all about how Turning Point USA has taken
Yes,
over
I
the
saw that.
GOP.
Yeah.
It's a long article, but well worth the read. I can put the link in there, but again, it is you have to be a subscriber to access it. But it isn't. It's no longer that GOP. It's the GOP of Wendy Rogers, of Marjorie Taylor Greene. If you don't, espouse that Christian nationalist ideology, you're not going to be part of the party. You're going to be censured. But I am talking to so many people who, like John Giles, say, I don't recognize this party anymore. I voted a straight Democratic ticket. And countless people right now. So please tell me that you're having some of those same conversations, because every Friday we have these kind of depressing discussions, and it's like we're going into the weekend for get out the vote. But we want to still give people hope, because there is hope in my experience. How about yours?
So yes, absolutely, there is hope. I think, well, Jean, I'm going to launch into this tirade first before I tell you anecdotal. I think we all need to take our pitchforks and go after the media, because they are responsible, directly responsible, for the creation of the Trumpism, for using it for their based on profit, not to educate and inform our citizens. It is the most unpatriotic thing that they have been doing. So they've given so much oxygen to all this nonsense. So every time I talk to the press, I tell them what they need. But right after that, I don't stop. I tell them, you are responsible. So don't start wringing your hands now and telling us, what is the league doing? What are you doing? The league should not be in this place trying to fight something that is such a falsehood based on the oxygen you're giving. Jean, I want to share this with you, because it's depressing, but I'll get to the positive side pretty soon. Okay. There is this amazing journalist from India, Palki, and she runs this sort of group called Gravitas. It's wonderful how she goes after it. She got an award, and here's what she said, Jean, and this is mindful of what we should be paying attention to. She said, wars, religious wars, and all kinds of wars were fought by oppressors to oppress people. And how did they do it? They laid siege on towns and cities, and they used the poisoning of water to oppress and kill people that they wanted to conquer. If you take that analogy, what we have today is the poisoning of minds, so that we are fearful and we cave to that fear. It is a direct new way of oppressing people and using fear to cause them not to fight back. That's how, whenever people fought back, this is Ukraine people fighting back. If our Congress changes, those countries that are so dependent on the moral high ground, which I doubt that we have a whole lot more left, of the US to protect people across the world through how we stand up, is in serious jeopardy. The chaos this is not something for us to ignore, because it's real. So we got to get everybody to vote. The league consists of, I suspect, approximately a third Democrat, a third independent, and a third Republicans. And people often may not know that it's my understanding that the league, when it was originally formed, were formed by some really strong Republican women who really wanted to fight for voting rights and so on. So it's an interesting history. I tell you that, Jean, because just in our membership, the level of anxiety is palpable, is so palpable. People tell me they can't sleep, okay? However, what I also find very interesting is people who say to me, I'm a Republican. I would never have voted for a Democrat, but I am not giving my vote to any of these people. That's both independents and Republican women. So I can only speak from that, right? When we make the phone calls, we're certainly hearing, oh, I'm not voting for them. But we also get nasty stuff like, women should not have the right to vote. So when we talk about bodily autonomy, the next thing is our right to vote, women's right to vote. So, so I'm alarmed, I'm worried, I'm anxious, I'm afraid of what's going to happen at the polling location, but we can't stop. The Black Voters Matter have a saying, we won't back down. Okay. And I think it's admirable, for what they're saying. Let's not back down. Let's not black down. Let's not brown down, whatever. Okay. We stand our ground.
Well, I mean, I'm just, because, people, of course, ask me all the time, what do you think? What are your projections? How do you feel about this race or that race? And I'm just waiting to see, because I can't at this, I've had expectations about elections since 2012. I've always been an optimist, and probably prematurely in 2012, I shouldn't have been as optimistic. But I was optimistic in 2016, and we all, were traumatized in November of 2016. I got a little bit more of that optimism back in 2018 when we got Kathy Hoffman elected and Katie Hobbs, and there was a bit of a hope. And then 2020, I mean, it's just this roller coaster. We can't trust Nate Silver anymore. All of his predictions are wrong. And so we just we have to, do the legwork.
And you know what? Jane, I'm so glad you brought up Nate Silver, because these are all people who want to be in the news. They're not really about serving the country. They are not patriots, in my opinion. I never thought Nate Silver was a whiz in this. I say that because I have a statistics background, so I just feel strongly about this. Okay, polling has never been a science, and its predictability capability is really questioned and challenged, and not to be challenged. However, who's giving them oxygen? Media. Okay. Yesterday on PBS, did you all see Judy Woodruff on PBS? So she starts a segment by talking about how, young voters are distant, blah, 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 all that nonsense, because the polling shows that. And there was someone who came and spoke right after that, somewhere in there, and talked about the enthusiasm of the young voters to vote. But they're not being reflected in the polls. So I want to know, who the heck are you talking to? Okay. In the same way, the Republican voice, who are these Republicans they're talking to? So I don't believe in those polls. Anyway, we have to, it's the vote finally. So let's do the work to get out that vote,
Mm-hmm. So one last question, since it is almost 1 o'clock. I've been listening. I basically only listen to NPR, KJZZ is the source of a lot of my news, BBC, perhaps, Al Jazeera. Are you concerned about, and again, I'm doing my best not to worry about things that I can't control, but there are a lot of people who are really worried about the fact that, Carrie Lake has already said that she's not going to accept the results. We have candidates all over the country saying that. And I mean, as we're seeing, these radical extremists, their speech, whether it's posted on Twitter or in an interview or at a rally, has real consequences. I mean, the way that Nancy Pelosi is targeted and how people speak about her, and then what happened at her home in San Francisco to her husband, Paul. But then Carrie Lake she's making jokes about it, and people are laughing. So the rhetoric caused this fringe guy who is an election denier to break into somebody's house with a hammer and attack them. Carrie Lake making jokes about it and immediately calling it a conspiracy theory. We'll have people, and her saying, I won't accept the results, just in the same way that Trump did. Look at what happened on January 6th. Are you worried? And again, I'm not trying to worry about things I can't control, but is there concern about the possibility of people, Kelly Townsend herself called for people to act as vigilantes. Are you concerned about vigilantism after the election?
Oh, very seriously.
Yeah.
Because you now have bad actors in the elections tabulation area. which means they have access to information and could use it, okay, and provide that information, okay. Do these people believe in following the law? The great law and order party is all about lawlessness, okay, and so very, very worried, absolutely very worried at this time about this particular issue, really significantly worried about the potential for violence, not on the day of election, but post-election, where they're going to gear up, you know, with the, so, you know, Jean, like I said, you know, we need to fight this where we can with our vote, not where we can, we must fight it with our vote and hope we don't have to fight it in the streets.
Yep, amen. And so if you are looking for an opportunity to help a campaign, go to Civic Engagement Beyond Voting, Save Our Schools Arizona. There's all kinds of organizations. There's great candidates everywhere. We've got 4 days left, and I know where I am, we've got volunteers coming in and out and doing 3 shifts, sometimes knocking on as many as 100 or 150 doors in one day. So there are opportunities to help, and there are people who have hung on to their ballot for one reason or another and maybe need some help navigating through the system, and you all could be the help that those folks need. So Pinny, I want to thank you so much, and
You're
the League
welcome.
of Women Voters, for your suggestions. I also you know, want you to stay safe out there as somebody who's watching the polls, and for all of you who are also doing that work, we'll be thinking about you. And 4 more days, folks. I hope everybody has a very busy weekend. You don't get a relaxing weekend until next weekend. This is going to be a tireless, busy weekend. So, and the weather's perfect for it.
Yeah. Thank you, Jean, for inviting me. Appreciate being on the call.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.